Hi, everyone. My name is Mika, and I am the co chair and co founder of AAPI in Gaming. Today, I'm here with Cindy Tran from Obsidian Entertainment, and we're here to talk about so many amazing topics in today's session. We'll be covering the importance of authentic representation in games, breaking into spaces as AAPI, and her experiences in social and community in games. So, Cindy, tell us about yourself.
Hi, y'all. My name is Cindy. Last name is Tran. I am the social media manager for Obsidian Entertainment. I've been working here for like almost five years now, which is insane. Time flies when you're having fun for sure. And I'm super excited to be here and to talk a little bit more about my background, some opinions regarding game development, and some other insights as someone who is part of the API community.
Thank you. And that's awesome. 5 years is a pretty long time.
I know, and it's what's really cool is that we just started Agents of Obsidian, which is our ERG group for folks who are API, and we've been doing really cool activities. We actually just visited Blizzard campus to talk with their API folks, so it's really cool that we had the opportunity to kind of put together folks who are members of these ERGs in a setting where developers can talk to each other. But I'm like always looking forward to having more opportunities like that for sure. But let's focus on this interview. Sorry.
No, no, no. We already are focused on this interview. Talking about your ERG still fits into the topic. So thank you
For
for
sure.
sharing that. So I usually like to start with a ton of icebreaker questions for a lot of my sessions, but today I'm just going to do only one. Today's icebreaker question is, what is your favorite Obsidian Entertainment game of all time?
Leading up to working at Obsidian, I'm a huge fan of the Outer Worlds, but also Fallout New Vegas. And my friends are always just like, "Oh, is that your favorite game, Fallout New Vegas?" No, it is not. Even though I really like that game, it is actually South Park: Stick of Truth. I think that a lot of the stylization, the humor fits along with the type of humor that I go for when it came to that time of like I apologize for my French, but it's kind of like the era of like shit posting. And we can take that out. We're not allowed to say that. But during the era of shit posting, which is when I was indulging a lot in memes at the time, and then eventually that became part of the tasks that I do. But it's also that weird feeling of that becoming research and how to go about navigating the social media space. And I think that South Park really like hits home for me when it comes to being at a young age and being a kid and trying to understand like what's the internet, what is the culture like, what is like all these topics being talked about, and how does that convert into humor in order for people to digest information. And now it's become part of my job where I'm just like, wow, look at all these memes and stuff going on. How do people connect through that? Which is like the strangest part to me. But what makes it so cool working as a social media manager for sure.
One of the things I like about South Park, The Stick of Truth, they don't hold back when they talk about in real life situations. Like, I remember that one time, Stick of Truth, I think it was part two that introduced this, but when you select a difficulty, it's not just selecting your difficulty, it's selecting the skin color of your character. And I was just like, oh my goodness, they did not just do that. And ever since then, I was just like, I applaud them for doing that because that is so real.
The way it's also relevant to how South Park does things now is that there's not only like putting humor on things, but it's also like addressing actual issues that are going on for sure when it comes to specific topics of sensitivity. Of course, they go with a very like either ironic or very harsh way of going about it, but it's also that virality or that ends up becoming awareness for folks to know like these are genuine issues. And of course, they're trying to make fun of it, but at the same time, it's like this exists for sure.
I know the skin color thing was just something that really resonated with me. I remember growing up that I used to be judged for not being the default skin tone. So it was really hard for me to fit in as I was growing up in the Americas as an immigrant. So I think Stick of Truth, it did make me laugh when I saw that, but I also felt like, well, that was just real. I'm glad somebody brought that in. Maybe I think a lot of games should try to, I don't know, stick in real issues through some of the game options that they currently have in their game. So,
Yeah, I actually have
yeah.
a comment about phenotypes for sure when it comes to character creation and some of the concerns that I have and what I would like to see in games. But I can totally cover that later. I know that's a later question that's related to that. So.
South Park, Stick of Truth, everyone. That is Cindy's favorite Obsidian game of all time. Everyone knows that I love Knights of the Old Republic 2. And if I were to talk about Knights of the Old Republic 2, we're never going to get off this call because I'm going to go all over the place on that. Let's get on to the real topic because I've been dying to know how she feels about certain things. I think Cindy Tran's answers are going to be hitting home for a lot of folks, and tonight's going to be very educational. So let's get started.
Sure.
On the topic of authenticity, the first question that I wanted to ask you is, how do you feel about games representing Asian and Pacific Islander culture? Do you feel like that they are just right? Are they stereotypical? Or are they lacking things that make it authentic?
Yeah. So actually, funny enough, I just spoke with some of our members at Asian Obsidian this morning, just casually talking about like, oh, hey, I have this interview thing going on, and they're like, yeah, what are they talking about? I'm like, oh yeah, we were talking about examples of representation in games, and they're like, oh yeah, like here's some cool examples. I'm like, oh, I'm stealing that, thanks. Just to give a little bit of insight for me working at Obsidian, something that ties closely to me is that we have a character named Hoops, and her full name is Aling Nguyen. So she is Vietnamese, and what's really cool is that Grounded was actually my first project that we shipped together as a team when I joined the studio. Like I joined during early access, and it was crazy, but it was so cool seeing the game grow, but also seeing Hoops as a character that is Asian, especially for myself because we don't really get to see Southeast Asians as much in games. But I noticed that there's been more opportunities as of recent. I know, for example, Mitch, who is a concept artist at the studio, he's well acquainted with a lot of folks that work at Blizzard, and he was telling me about Lifeweaver in Overwatch, which is super cool because Lifeweaver, as you know, is Thai. Taki is the one who designed Lifeweaver, but with the intention, because he's also Thai, to put a lot of the what he celebrates in his culture into the character. And I think that a lot of folks who play Overwatch resonate very well to see that representation beautifully become a character that you can play in a game. And I was like, oh my god, that's so cool. I was like, can we get more Vietnamese representation? And then we have Juno, and Juno is Vietnamese too. And I'm like, whoa, this is like super cool. So I think that our friends over at Blizzard do a really good job of putting more characters. I know there's another character coming out, Aqua too, and he's also Asian. I'm just like, oh my god, this is so cool. We're seeing more Asian representation. Yay! Another good representation example is definitely Neon from Valorant. I apologize, I don't know as much about Valorant. However, we have Daniel Capucho, who's the art director here at Obsidian. He used to work at Riot and told me how he's Filipino himself, and he was able to give insights as reference to how to go about being appropriate when it comes to the character's background, how the character should look, how the character authentically and also is a way for people to connect to this character without, there's specific times where I feel that there might be like stereotypes put into characters, and it's so important for groups like ERG groups, for example, the Agents of Obsidian. If there's any questions about, hey, we're putting this art or we're putting this character, we're putting these concepts into the game, can we get some feedback so that we are able to move forward with the idea of cultural sensitivity when it comes to either game development, creating characters and worlds that really resonate with the folks in those communities? Are there concerns regarding lacking of things to make things authentic? One thing I did notice in the games industry, and something that I'd like to address a little bit more, is that when it comes to multiplayer games, there's like skins and such. And one thing I've noted, not to say anything specific, but is that when you create a character and then you provide a skin that is purchasable for the intent of profit, of course, like in game development, the expectation is at the end of the day we have to make a profit. But when it comes to skins that kind of lose a lot of the celebration of what the character is to its core, I think that's when we start having conversations of like, hey, we did notice that this character has changed in a specific way that has really lost the identity of what they are originally. That's when I start raising eyebrows and thinking that, is it worth this type of sacrifice of the celebrations of this character for the sake of profit? And I think those are important conversations to have, and why it's so important that every time like an Asian character, for example, is to get a skin, to check back with the folks who are part of those communities being like, hey, do you think that this takes away from the character? And it could be a simple yes, a simple no, or something that you have to talk about through a meeting. I think that that's something that needs to be addressed in game development for sure.
I just came across like a couple of conversations regarding the new skins for Overwatch, especially when it comes to Street Fighter. A lot of players were seriously debating about why Mei did not get the Chun Li skin, but I think, was it Juno that got the Chun Li skin? And it was like, yeah, I'm not sure if it's because it's about the look of the character, but as far as I remember, people were complaining that Mei didn't get Chun Li, someone who is of Chinese descent, not get a character that is of Chinese descent.
That's why
So
I'm very appreciative of characters that are not only a specific background, but it's also like the voice actors too. It's of the same background. I really appreciate it when Neon's, for example, has the voice actor who's Filipino, so it's like important for characters to have that as a way to tie into like the developers really care about this character. So in the sense of what you're trying to explain to me regarding yeah, that's a legitimate concern for sure, is that like when it comes to collaborations and such, what do you think is considered appropriate and what really the community cares about when it comes to opportunities like these.
I guess this already leads into that questions that I have for you next, which is, do you feel that we do enough in representation, or do you think that many companies are just checking boxes for the sake of representation, or do you think that many companies are also just doing this for the sake of profit?
This is what I noticed, is that a lot of I so it's kind of one of those things where I'm just like, there's so many cool devs who are from the API community that are working on these games, and I think it's with Obsidian specifically is getting these perspectives on how they go about designing things or putting their own personal like experiences into what they make or what they build in a game is what makes me think that I think we do a pretty good job in the game industry of representing specific characters of different backgrounds, for sure. When I say the checkboxes, I think that's a lot less as of recent because there's a lot of API folks who are working more in game dev now ever before, especially at Obsidian. Like we have so many folks who are part of AO, and I'm like, this is so cool that we have like a whole group that is working on these games. So sorry, it's a hard question to answer, but I think in my perspective that there's so many cool Asian characters that I see in video games that I feel like game devs definitely do a good job, and especially about caring about how characters are made and their backgrounds, and making sure not to put specific stereotypes towards those characters, and focusing more on the story and what how their culture ties into those stories. And I think that itself is a great way to do authentic representation for API folks.
It wasn't like how it was when 5 years ago, I think. It was 5 years ago, or maybe it was a little longer than that. A lot of games were putting in Asian characters into their games just for the sake of representation. But most of the time, a lot of the times that we see those characters as either usually Japanese or Chinese, which is basically like romanticization of the two largest, or the two largest markets in the games industry, I think.
I think
Uh,
that a lot of folks who work in the industry are taking more critical feedback regarding what are the best practices for characters. I think this is not just video games, but media in general. Like I remember in like the mid 2000s when Asian characters with like a streak of like purple hair or like a streak of different, that was an
yeah.
issue at the time because it's like, why are all these Asian characters having this one streak of hair? And they're like, wow, we're so cool. I mean, they are cool. But I think that it's really important for for folks to take feedback from the community to see what would be the appropriate and also culturally sensitive decisions to make when it comes to representation.
The purple streak hair thing, which I do remember growing up seeing that. There was like a one animated film that I saw during COVID. It was with Matt Damon, I think. He was in an animated film. I keep forgetting what it was called, but there was a character who actually isn't voiced by an Asian character as well. She had a purple streak on her hair, and she looks and she feels like she was designed to be Asian, but she was voiced by somebody who isn't of Asian descent. So yeah, I remember growing up watching a lot of cartoons with with that sort of character design and direction for them. So it is a lot different than it was before.
Yeah, I think that we do a really good job of trying to lessen the fetishization of Asians when it comes to like the Western standard of what an Asian should look like or be, and rather being like, no, we are a melting pot of culture. Asia's huge, and even though we have similarities for sure in how we do practices, religion, and stuff, they're so distinct and unique in the arts and how they go about practicing religion, and even like how they do buildings like castles and temples and stuff. It wows me every time, and I think that we're doing a more progressive job of trying to incorporate those elements into media and even into video games for sure.
The next question I wanted to ask was probably just this one line. What are some aspects of authenticity you wish to see in upcoming games?
I want to tie a little bit more into character creation because there was one video game where I had so for me when I play video games, I prefer to play the canon protagonist or whatever is marketed being like this is what the protagonist looks like. I'm like, I'm playing that style. But when it comes to a game that's like you can be anything and they give you the agency to be like you can be yourself, I'll be like, okay, so I'll just make myself in the game because that's fun. One thing that I had an issue with was when I was in the character creation. And trust me, I'm really good at character creation. Like if you give me an anime character or like a meme character, I'll make it real quick, no problem in character creation. But the thing is that I noticed I was going through like the different eye sets and they didn't have like the almond shape, and I'm just like, and meanwhile I'm just like in the game and I'm like, no, 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 like I want to be able to have my phenotype in the game. So I think that I would love to see more character customization options, and it's not even limited to like the API community. This goes for all different communities, is that by being able to find distinct features in character customization so folks are able to best represent themselves in a fictional setting. I think that's so core when it comes to the player experience, as someone who also plays video games too.
I remember going through the character creation. It's not just the eyes, but it's more of like the facial structure,
That's true.
especially when I like to make male looking characters, but I also like the androgynous look. And a lot of times, like when people make male character customization, it's always like a very square, not a very slender face or triangular. There seems to be like more limited options for males who are also Asian too, versus like women who are Asian, when they get a little more options than their male counterparts do. I know how that feels.
That's why I think that the modding communities do a fantastic job being able to have those features. Like, I think that there's some issues in the sense of some people make characters that are like the beauty standards of, say, like, Asian beauty standards or Western beauty standards when it comes to how to create a character. But the modding community is like, you can be like anime character pretty, or you can be yourself, or if you want to look like a monster, you can. So I think that having that range of character customization is so core. But then again, I might be biased because I just really like spending hours and hours in character creation. So
Oh, I'm the same way. Whenever I play a game, it's usually an RPG, and they have like full blown character customization. Of course, I'm gonna put myself in the game because I, I mean, I like the way I look, so I want to put myself in the game. If I don't usually see the options there, I'll probably just look for the mod to help me get there, so I can
yeah,
enjoy the game.
I feel the same way. I mean, I'm a cosplayer. Like I'm like I want to slay. If I'm gonna slay, I'm gonna slay and slay. So
Slay squared. It's by Cindy Tran. Moving on from authenticity, we're gonna go into your experience as a game developer. One of my favorite parts is talking about the person, the subject, the star of the show, because I always think the star of the show is the best part of the show. So totally, Cindy, go all out with this. So the first question is, throughout your career, what are some of the challenges you have to face as an AAPI game dev? How do people perceive you in public?
so this is always a fun question because it's like I go. So right now I look pretty presentable, but like on the daily I'm wearing like glasses and I'm all hunched over, looking all scrunkly and stuff. But then when it comes to me, presenting or even talking to folks in a more professional manner, I'm just like I gotta clean up a little bit, do my hair and stuff. But it's a little bit of the boundaries, I think, as an API, and also trying to understand like what are the faces that you have to put on. Because I feel like sometimes you have to put on your work mask versus your like personal mask, and even your social media mask. I am very like I respect a lot of content creators who are part of the API community because you are putting your face out there and you're also trying to connect with your community, but there's also the dangers of parasocial relationships, having folks online think that they really know you when you're very different. So I think that the challenge of boundaries, I sometimes have folks messaging me regarding concerns regarding to work after hours, and I'm just like, I know y'all are super excited about A, B, and C about this time. Like, this is me outside of work and this is me during work. So it's being able to distinguish what is an appropriate time for you to be on your on switch and trying to communicate to those that it's not okay during your off switch. That's one thing that I like to say is like when it comes to me representing Obsidian, of course I'm more than happy to chat, but when it comes to like my cosplay stuff, I'm like like let's put a little bit of separation right there. So it's being able to establish those boundaries when working in game dev. And I think that a lot of influencers struggle with that for sure, because you want to be the face of your channel. But that's why I always say, even as a content creator or influencer, you are a social media manager. Unless you're hiring someone to do all that stuff for you, you yourself are a social media manager, and it's very impressive on the amount of hard work that they put into. But it's also making sure that they are safe, and that's what I always want the best for creators, is that making sure that they are safe too.
That's a really good point to set as a to say as a sorry, not a community manager, a social media manager. Even though social media and community do work hand in hand together, or they could be the same, depending on what company you work in. Those are really good insights, by the way. Setting yourself healthy boundaries, because sometimes, like when I work in community management, a lot of times the team would always ask me if are there any issues that are happening, even though it's after hours, and it's like, okay, I can do like a quick look and just tell them a quick summary or so. But if it's something, that requires me to be on the desk and such, it's kind of hard to set those boundaries for me, because a lot of times community managers do live their job like 24/7, unfortunately. Whereas I think social media managers, it depends, because most of the time, like, you're managing other social media platforms, whereas like community managers, they're just checking for feedback that's live and what happened like a few hours ago. And it sucks because we do want to set healthy boundaries. I don't think we should stop trying to strive for healthy boundaries as either of those roles.
I
Otherwise, we're just
agree.
going to be taken advantage. Yeah, otherwise we're just going to be taken advantage of. I guess this leads on to this next question. Like, what do you wish? What are some things you wish you knew before becoming a social media manager?
Oh, it's hard because I come from more of an analytics background when it comes to a lot of how my methodologies are, my approaches, and how I go about social media. And like, I'm just a nerd, dude, when it comes to that stuff. If I were to go back and kind of talk to myself, I would wish myself to do a little bit more content creation, in the sense of that it's one of those things like, do I regret this? No, but it's kind of like I kind of wish I was a streamer. I kind of wish I was a little bit more presented, like more forward facing, so that I can get more experience to understand how to go about content and how to go about community and how to go about this. But at the same time, it's one of those things that it's like boundary. I don't know, that's a really hard question for me. I think that I came into this position prepared, and Shila's my manager. She's been giving me an awesome opportunity to have the creative freedom to navigate throughout my professional career and work on my development goals to where it felt really natural to me, and not much more of like, if I think back and what is something that I could have taken more of in terms of insights, maybe like a social media class. I think that would be like a regret of like, well, I didn't take that, but rather I did more focus, definitely for sure, on the data and analytics and being able to forecast how things happen. And that has helped me tremendously when it comes to understanding, the algorithm and how you post content and how to forecast if a content is going to be successful with your community. But also, like, at the same time, numbers does not equal success. It's also like sentiment, how people resonate with your content and how people feel genuinely about the games that you make. There will be situations where you have to have quantitative information and qualitative information, and the answer is never one or the other. You should have qualitative insights and quantitative data to make informed decisions on what you do. So combine the best of both worlds. Don't just be like, because of data, do this, or because I feel like this, do this. I think that having both insights will help you be more successful personally and also be more successful in the work you do.
That's almost like saying that if you were a product manager, then the quantitative data matters. But if you were like somebody who's a creative, then the qualitative content matters. But being a social media manager is combining the best of both worlds, right? I totally agree, because sometimes I feel like I know that we do social media back before we did games was mostly for shit posting, like you said earlier, and I was like that as well before. I always love going online just checking out for memes, but sometimes I also have to remember that not everybody likes that sort of thing. Sometimes it feels like you need to grab some data to help your teams out. Basically, it can't always be just memes and other creative things too. So my next question, besides being a social media manager, do you feel that working at Obsidian empowers you to be the best that you can be? And how does it feel working at a place like that?
Going back to what I said earlier, absolutely, dude. I love my job. It's so cool. Like it's kind of funny how a lot of folks call me like the memeologist at the studio, or they're like, yeah, Cindy's pretty much knowing what. And a lot of my coworkers come up to me, be like, "Have you seen this video?" I'm like, "Yeah, I saw it like 2 months ago." I'm not saying it like, "Oh, sorry, like I already saw that," but I'm just like, "Oh, I saw that 2 months ago." They're like, "Of course you did." I'm like, "Yeah," but it's one of those jokes. But at the same time, it's true that Obsidian gives me the agency to have the creative freedom to work on the stuff that I do. And I think that as the communications team, Shyla, and even all my other coworkers for sure, do a really good job of making sure that I'm well supported in a lot of the initiatives that I have when it comes to doing campaigns or games, or even like in my daily life. They're like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yes, thank you. I appreciate it." So it's super wholesome to be able to work in a studio that really cares about you and also cares about your well being, but also care about the work that you do and how they can help you grow and learn as you continue throughout your career for sure. That's what I'm just like. Yeah, City's super cool. That's like a TLDR. Like, yeah, I love working here.
You know, Obsidian Entertainment was like the company that I always dreamed of working because of, as I said before, Knights of the Old Republic. Two, not one, two was my favorite game, and I've always wondered, like, if I ever worked at that place, I wonder what it would be like. Seeing that you feel very empowered to do what you can do in your role to be successful makes me glad that Obsidian is not like every other game company out there that's just all about crunch life and whatnot and pushing you to the limit. If they're nurturing for you, then all right. Obsidian is like probably one of the top places to work at.
What I really value is that for our studio, of course there'll be times that we'll be incredibly busy because of launches, because of deadlines, etc. But life is more important than work. Like sometimes I'm like, "Oh guys, just a heads up, I got a doctor's appointment at 11." They're like, "Yeah, man, like focus on your health." Like it's one of those things where it makes me want to work even more or work even harder to make sure that we're successful. And they're like, "Hey, just letting you know, don't work too long." And I'm just like, "Oh my god, they really care about me. I gotta keep working to make sure that the games do like our games are doing well and stuff." So I don't know, just one of those things that I value a lot. This company.
Awesome. And this last question about your experience, I guess you already answered this, but I maybe elaborate a little bit more. The question was about what challenges do you experience working as a
I can actually
social
elaborate on
media
that
manager?
if you ask that question.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah.
So I guess the last question will be what challenges do you experience working as a social media manager? And if you can overcome them, what are your methods? If you can't, how should they be solved?
Of course. So one of the challenges that I face working as a social media manager is that, you're kind of like, I don't want to say the class clown, but you're definitely the funny person when it comes to making super fun content. And that's why like people are like, "Oh, you're the meme master." I'm like, "Yep, I am." But it's also as someone who is Asian that works in game dev, some of the struggles that I have is that when I'm speaking with other developers or just in general folks who are outside the company or just like working in game dev, is that they don't take me as seriously. It's unfortunately one of those things where I feel like we're kind of like I apologize if I can't pronounce the word correctly, but it's kind of like infantilization of like Asians that work like, "Oh my god, you're so cute. Oh my god, like you're so like." I've had situations where I've been working and then I have work attire and work stuff, and they're just like, "Are you supposed to be here?" Like people will question if you even work like at a certain place, being like, "Oh, like are you supposed to be here because you don't look a specific way or you don't act in a specific manner?" Of course, like I'll instantly switch and be like, "Yes, hi, I'm Cindy. I'm the social media manager for Obsidian Entertainment, and I'm here to work on etc." So it's being able to read the situation and address it accordingly, but also making sure that you don't take, that type of attitude when it comes to folks. But sometimes folks are just blind to that. They genuinely just don't know. So I always take a very informative approach for folks who are, genuinely being like, "Oh, like you're a game dev," or, "Oh, are you supposed to be here?" Or like, I'm like, "Yes," and I take pride in my work, and I'm here to inform you of what you said is wrong. And I think it is very important for folks who are Asian or even like Pacific API folks, like anyone in the community, if even if you are if you are a minority, if someone is questioning your work, questioning you, and questioning like, are you even supposed to be like, yes, because I proudly represent the studio, and I'm proudly working in this position. And I think that having that energy and empowering people who feel that they don't have the strength to say that, that's why I want to inspire folks to be able to say what they say what they need to say and be able to bring themselves out there and help other people who want to work in the games industry, be that wealth of knowledge for them.
That kind of reminds me of my time when I actually went into the veterans office, and a lot of people thought I was lost, and I had to explain to people that, hey, you might think that I don't look the part, but I am a registered veteran in the U.S. Navy, and I get how you feel when someone questions you about the way you look, because a lot of times people connect your looks, and they would think that, oh, they must be lost. They must not have gotten the right directions for this place, but you are actually at the right place and at the right time. It's unfortunate that you probably experience this very often. Basically, you probably experience this very often as you go out and represent Obsidian Entertainment in conventions, conferences, or any other public place that has Obsidian Entertainment hosting some kind of booth. Your insight about standing up for yourself and telling people straight up that you do work here and you're proud to work here and you take pride in your work is really important, and is probably going to be like one of the things that a lot of people will take away from this call to help them further their career, and also to stand firm in their position, not just as a game developer but as somebody who is a minority, especially in the AAPI community, in solidifying their role in games and in
I'm
life
not
too.
like live, laugh, love Obsidian Entertainment for sure, but I genuinely do care about how the company is overall and making sure that we do our best to um, take care of the company that takes care of us. And not to be like culty and stuff, but I really do genuinely care about how we go about things at the studio for like definitely for sure.
There's nothing wrong standing your own company, because if they actually do empower you, why not? Like the last company that I ever stand for was Congregate before they actually went under. Um, it was probably like the only, not just the game company, but the only company that has ever treated me like a human and not somebody as the other. So if Obsidian gives you that empowerment, of course you're going to stand for it, because why not? These are the companies. Obsidian Entertainment should be one of the shining examples of what a game studio should be.
It's kind of hard to kind of hone that authentic feel of working at a game dev studio and feeling known and being recognized, versus being like one out of 1,000. So I think that's a cool characteristic of the studio is that we're sizable enough to where I can just go up to a dev's office and be like, hey, I just had a question about something I'm working on. They're like, yeah, man, let's talk, or like let's schedule for sure. Meanwhile, like I feel that other companies that they have to go through levels of approvals and levels of like, hey, like I'm booked out till like the next 2 months. Like I'm not gonna be able to answer your question. So it's really cool to kind of get more one to one and in the nitty gritty of things than having to wait, a month later for a response.
I want to go further more into, as an Asian American person breaking into games. So I feel like this is something that a lot of the folks in the community would want to hear, because right now in our community we have a lot of entry level folks who are either just graduating from college, and it's probably one of the most difficult years to break into the video games industry, don't you think?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So let's go talk about breaking into games. Do you feel that breaking into games industry today is a lot more difficult than how you remember before?
Yes, it is incredibly difficult to work in game dev right now. I think that if anything, the traditional style of game development where you have a company of developing games with the X amount of employees is becoming like the current standard, but I think that the beauty in seeing more folks start up their own, indie dev studios or working on their own games has been one of the most awesome things that I've been observing. Like, I know that Spelunky was also from an Asian dev. There's a game that I'm super interested in right now that I saw on TikTok, and it's called Loading, and it talks about a 10-year-old boy who lost his brother, and he's going through different mediums of video games to help cope with his loss. And that is made also by a Vietnamese developer. And I'm also, we have some folks who are great examples and role models for the community, such as Victoria, who works at Innersloth. Victoria Tran at Innersloth, and we also have Nick, who works at Agro. Crab. So I think that for folks, I highly encourage to empower themselves with the creativity that they have in their minds and to find like-minded folks to create awesome games, because at companies it takes a lot for folks to make the level of standard of games that players want. But at the same time, it's also beautiful to see the how different forms mediums of like how experimental folks are with indie games. Don't be afraid to take that risk and have the folks who want to work with you. And I think that those feelings will resonate really well with players and help you become successful yourself.
It's been one of the common answers about breaking into games industry is start your own studio or find a group that you just vibe with, usually from game jams and such. And most of the time I feel like a lot of the games that we're seeing from indie developers are becoming so well polished, so good. I've already talked about this in the previous streams, but A Thousand Times Resist by Sunset Visitor was one of the indie games that came out last year that really took my breath away. It's a game that I highly recommend for everyone to play. It talks about intergenerational trauma. It also talks about coming of age as a AAPI individual living in Canada. Indie games that talk about AAPI representation and the diaspora itself. They're incredible quality pieces that I think everyone should try out. So yes, for those who are still trying to break into games, I would highly recommend, and Cindy Tran would highly recommend, finding a group of people to create these experiences together. I guess the last question I wanted to ask you is, what are some things that helped you navigate the games industry successfully? So we could talk about like resources like affinity groups. You did mention affinity groups earlier with Blizzard API.
So what's a cool thing that we do at Obsidian is that there are two cool things actually. The first thing is that we have a lot of students who come from programs from either college and high school come toward the studio, and then we usually have folks who work in different positions or disciplines and kind of explain who they are, what they do, and how do they break into the games industry. And I think that's a beautiful thing for colleges and schools to be able to give those folks the opportunity to kind of immerse themselves and experience what it's like to work in game dev. Um, for me, I not only should folks look into doing game jams and work on their own games, internships for sure. So a little bit of insight myself. I was actually an intern at Obsidian for their community manager position at the time, and originally I didn't really expect to work in games. I was expecting to work in tech. I was looking into like programs for Dell, Kronos, Raytheon, etc. to my university program, but because of COVID, that made things more complicated. But I noticed that Obsidian had their position available. I'm like, oh, cool, I'll apply. And for me, I am a first generation American. I come up from a very low income family. And during high school, I took a corporate work study program to help pay for my tuition when I was in private school. Not only that, it's like you're expecting a 14-year-old to do like data reconciliation. That's crazy. But I did it. It took me very far on my resume. Like even my coworker Gracie jokes about like, dude, it made you so like sound like so snooty and like intimidating and stuff. I'm just like, I know I'm a nerd. I'm sorry, but that Excel experience became so valuable to me in terms of skill set. So I have like a dual concentration. I did marketing and also information systems for my degree. And then I'm about to graduate next year with my business analytics degree, so my MSBA, so Masters of Science in Business Administration, like fancy buzzwords, but um, I value my education a lot and how those learnings can be incorporated to the work I do. I know some people study for the sake of getting the degree. I study for the sake of improving my professional goals and my own personal lifestyles because I just love learning. I'm a massive nerd when it comes to that stuff. But for a lot of folks who want to work in games, I think that, for example, like there's folks who are studying gaming, but I don't think you should limit yourself to just studying gaming because there's also like media and there's also other forms of like stuff out there that where yes, if you're passionate about gaming, I highly encourage you to do your passions, but just in case that does not work out, I think it's good to take like more foundational stuff that will be core to what you will work on eventually. So I didn't come from a social media background, but because of my experience on the, being chronically online, and a lot of like my insights and analytics stuff ties a lot into the work I do. Like even Dennis was an intern for QA, and now he's a systems designer. And Dennis Hyun, he's Vietnamese. He worked in accounting. It was just like one day, hey, I want to work in video games. But because of how like organizational and like how good he was like, when I go into games, I'm never touching Excel ever again. We just had a stream about talking about Dennis's experience. He's like, I'm never gonna use Excel. Of course, he had to use a spreadsheet when it was like systems design and QA. So I think that learning a lot of technical skills to help support on why you can help streamline things working at a game development studio, especially as an intern, I think is a good way to help get into game dev. But I know it's incredibly competitive, so that's why I always encourage folks to be working on their own projects in the meantime, or focusing more on honing their skills, getting certifications, and studying to help support what they want to do. Because for me, I'm just like I'm not allowed. I am not allowed to not get a job. I am not allowed to. I got a ton of student debt. I gotta get. And there's so much focus on myself being successful because originally I came from I studied pharmacy for part of a rotation program, etc. But once I knew it was like not for me, I was just like, all right, so this is not for me, but I'm gonna make sure the next thing is for me. But I hope that folks do the internships, shadow, be part of those college programs, get that experience and know what you're going to be in so that you can work towards that. And that's what motivated me was being like making sure that I am successful, but also at the same time having the experience to be like, is this what I really want to do? And yeah, I end up being like, I've been here for 5 years and I've been loving it since. So
Being multi-skillful, making yourself more marketable to other industries. I do agree that a lot of students shouldn't really limit themselves to just video games because a lot of times when people can't get into video games and that's the only thing that they want to work with, it will be a very disappointing career for them because there's going to be a lot of like I couldn't get into games and now I just feel very depressed and such, and I'm like, you can still work in games, it's just that like right now things are really tough. It's a very competitive market. So yes, I do agree, work on other skill sets too that not just only gets you into video games but to other industries as well, so it can help supplement your dreams of becoming a video game developer or just being sustainable enough that you could start your own games company, right? I do resonate with the whole, well, I came from a different background that wasn't in games originally, and I'm in the same boat as you because my degree wasn't in even anything game related. A lot of times people ask me like, "How did you even get into games with this degree?" And it's like, it's because I study people, and that's how I got into community management. Yeah. So for those who don't know, I graduated with a degree in anthropology, and I honestly wanted to work with the government, studying special interest groups, people who don't have a lot of information about their communities, and also to record them for academic purposes. That's all I ever wanted to do, but somehow I stumbled onto games. So for those who are still going through school, uh, you may never know where your degree might take you. Because honestly, I thought I was going to go into the government. No, I ended up going in games instead.
we honestly have so many folks that work in the studio that didn't work in games at all. They're like ex-military. They've been like,
Yeah.
I know someone that used to be a a professor, I believe, and then there's a couple of folks that have like wrote books, and they've also like worked in pharmaceuticals, and I was just like, whoa. And now they work in games, and even Dennis like working in accounting. So there's definitely folks here who have worked in different backgrounds but ended up working in games, and I think that it's one of those like, oh, the sky's the limit. But genuinely, as long as you set up those technical skills and hard skills and eventually kind of market yourself with those soft skills, that it will heighten your success in being able to work in the positions or work in the passions that you have when it comes to the games industry.
Absolutely. Well, that seems to be all the questions I have for you, Cindy. Honestly, this was really a joy to talk with you. I mean, I have already had a lot of fun talking with you in our previous meetings before,
Oh wow.
and I always love the energy that you bring and the openness that you also have, like the openness attitude that you have, but also not holding back, because I appreciate that, because a lot of times I feel like a lot of people are afraid to say certain things because it might ruin the stream or something. But for you, I wanted to tell you thank you for not holding back, because this is a stream where people need to hear the real, the raw energy, the vibes, the words that help them resonate. We had a couple of guests that talked about how like a lot of times media seems to AAPI peoples as quiet or reserved, and it's like, no, it's not like that. No, it's just how you portray us. We're not like that. Thank you so much for bringing that raw energy in. So
Anytime. And then if anyone's like tuning in right now and watching, do know that I do have a LinkedIn. It's only like, oh, add me on LinkedIn, but it's actually like if you have any questions regarding portfolios, resumes, any like questions that hasn't been answered during this, I am more than happy to answer your questions, and my inbox is always open. So if you ever need anything, I'm more than happy to help.
thank you so much, Cindy. So you hear that, folks? Cindy is a resource that you can lean on to. She can be found on LinkedIn, and please ask as many questions as you can to help you break into the games industry like she could. So thank you so much, Cindy. Thank you so much for being open and candid. And I hope that we have another chat together again sometime in the future, because you are a joy. You are a joy to have around here. And
Thank
we'd
you.
love to have you again in future sessions. Do you have any closing thoughts?
Happy API month, y'all. Be your authentic self, and you know, man, I'm really bad at closing words. The TLDR is that be you. That's the way to keep it simple. Be you and be your authentic self. Especially not even limited to game dev or games industry. As long as you feel that you are your authentic self, I feel that that will resonate with others, and then that's when you can really shine and bring out your confidence, and that will help you be successful for sure.
Thank you, Cindy. Happy AAPI Heritage Month, everybody. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. This is Cindy Tran from Obsidian Entertainment. We hope to see everybody again in the next future sessions. Tune in next time for AAPI in gaming. Bye.
Bye, y'all.